As you may know, I live in Amsterdam, have done for a few years now, and the first weekend in August every year is when Amsterdam Pride happens. It's a huge event. 1.5 million people came to Amsterdam last year for Pride, and so I wanted to tell you about queer liberation in Amsterdam and how the big celebration that we have now is really a reflection of international solidarity and some careful tactics. But it's just going to be me, and I'm going to be telling you a little bit of a story. So, modern Pride really begins in 1969 with the Stonewall riots. The Stonewall riots broke out on the 28th of June 1969 at the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village, New York. Now, at the time, there had been a history really, of police raids on gay bars. Gay bars were kind of the only place that gay people could exist publicly, be outwardly and proudly gay. But being openly gay was not something that was especially tolerated by polite society, so you couldn't just go to any bar and have that be a gay bar. And a lot of gay bars were run by the mafia. Such was the case with Stonewall. They didn't care so much about propriety, only that your money was green like everyone else's. And so raids would happen on gay bars, but this was usually during the week and without prior warning. But this raid was planned for a Friday night, or I suppose more specifically, 1:20 a.m. on Saturday morning, June the 28th. The bar was full, there were more than 200 people there. The plan from the police was to arrest trans people and drag queens and sort of harass the cis queer people that were there. Some of the patrons were confused, had never experienced a raid before, and tried to run, but the police had barricaded the door. Eventually, police started carting people away. One lesbian woman, some people credit this woman as Stormé de la Verrie, but her identity is not actually known for certain. Regardless, she started resisting that arrest, and she called out to the bystanders, "Why don't you do something?" And something they did. A riot broke out. The protests lasted several days and nights and galvanized people to act on behalf of gay rights. People were sick of being marginalized and attacked just for existing as they were. Several movements emerged out of this, including the Gay Liberation Front and the Gay Activists Alliance. That latter one developed a protest tactic called a zap, where you basically be a little bit uncouth, a little bit theatrical to draw attention to an issue. A famous example of this was Anita Bryant, a famous singer and anti-gay activist who was hit by a pie in the face in 1977 as part of a zap. Similarly, covering Nigel Farage with milkshake, as has happened so many times, is also a form of zapping. The first Gay Pride Liberation March took place in Manhattan in 1970 to commemorate the first anniversary of the Stonewall riot. In 1999, 30 years after Stonewall, June was declared officially to be America's Pride Month by Bill Clinton. This was quite a victory, but the fight was far from over. Now, Pride Amsterdam began in 1996, and unlike many other Pride movements throughout the world, this was not a liberatory movement. It was meant as a festival to celebrate freedom and diversity. There were Pride events which had been more political in the Netherlands in the years leading up to this. These were known as the Roze Zaterdag movements, meaning Pink Saturday. These officially began in 1977 and were organised by the International Lesbian Alliance. There had been some smaller protests, largely in support of Stonewall, throughout the Netherlands in the 1960s, including some activism which aimed to lower the age of consent for homosexual relationships so that they would be equal to that of heterosexual relationships. I believe the age of consent for heterosexual couples in the Netherlands at the time was 16, and for homosexual couples it was 21, so they were trying to get equality on that. But larger scale demonstrations didn't happen in the Netherlands until 1977 because the COC, which is a Dutch queer rights organisation, didn't think that this was necessary. Now, as for why that is, that's a topic worth investigating in a much longer episode. The name Roze Zaterdag came not in 1977, but in 1979 in Roermond, when protests emerged in response to comments made by a bishop, Bishop Guyssen, about homosexuality. The protests that the Rosa Zaterdag movements were undertaking took place in Holy Week, when Catholics celebrate Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and now, of course, Pink Saturday, Rosa Zaterdag. Rosa Zaterdag is still celebrated every year in the Netherlands, but where it's held rotates throughout the Netherlands. The city that it's in changes year on year. And Amsterdam Pride now remains not especially political. It was not intended to be a demand for anything. It was intended to be a celebration, a festival, and has pretty large institutional backing. Amsterdam Pride is not so much a march as it is a procession of boats along the river, and the first boat in the procession will always be the mayor's boat. Last year, some of the floats that were there included Katja, which is a candy brand which makes sweeties that in the United Kingdom would be known as Percy Pigs. I don't know if our North American listeners have anything similar, but the police had a float there as well. So this has some pretty big institutional backing. And it's a fun party, but that's not to say that Amsterdam is a queer paradise. It's a lot better for queer people than the many, many cities out there, but it still has issues. A couple of years ago, I met someone who was an organizer for Queer Amsterdam, which was kind of a competing pride event. She told me that she and some activists had gone to the organizing committee of Amsterdam Pride, which was made up of old, white, gay Dutchmen, and they suggested that they had some ideas for things to bring to the organisation of the festival. Ways to include more representation, for example, for people of colour or for trans people. And apparently, and I acknowledge this is hearsay, but apparently the response was, well, you guys can never agree amongst yourselves, so why should we listen to you? And as a result, Queer Amsterdam was founded, an event which was explicitly more political but did lots of fun events as well. They appear to not have been so active this year. Their big celebration was in 2024. But all of the best events that were put on last year were organised by Queer Amsterdam. And I think that this highlights the need to keep our foot on the pedal and to keep agitating, keep demanding a better world, but also take the time to find joy and connection and freedom and celebration within all of that. So wherever you are in the world, I thank you for your patience. I hope you have a wonderful week. I hope that you're fighting the good fight. And I also hope that you have some time to celebrate the diversity of your home and maybe have a big party too.